All right, good afternoon, Mavens. So, welcome to our very first inaugural Marine Mavens session. We are starting virtually for this year with our program with a webinar series. So, this is our very first webinar, and we're so excited to get into it in just one moment. So, what we're going to be doing is using our chat feature today. And what I would love is for everyone who is here, if you can drop your name in the chat, your pronoun preferences, and what you're excited about for this series, for getting involved with the Marine Mavens. While you're doing that, I will introduce myself and Sarah will introduce herself. So my name is Mary Dowd, and I am a program director with New England Science and Sailing Foundation. I am so excited to bring Marine Mavens to NES. My background is in marine science education and sail training. Recently, I came to NES from the Community Sailing Center up in Burlington, Vermont, where we had single gender programming called Women in Wind, and we got women as young as 6 and all the way up to 83 out sailing on Lake Champlain. And so I was really excited when our grant writer had an opportunity for some funding to bring single gender programming here to southeastern Connecticut. So Mavens, you are our first, and we're so excited to be here with you today. So Sarah, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah. I'm the Associate Sailing Director at New England Science and Sailing. I was really excited when Mary told me about this opportunity to get more girls on the water, learning about the water, and being involved with the world of the water. So I have a lot of sailing background, and I work with our education team here at NES. So I love teaching. I love teaching about the water. Getting girls specifically is something that I really love, is getting girls out on boats feeling confident. So I'm really excited to meet you all and get to spend the next few months with you guys doing some really awesome stuff.
Thanks, Sarah. All right. So like I said, this is your chance. Introduce yourself to the group. Use the chat. Say who you are, your pronouns, and what you're excited for by joining Marine Mavens today. We'll embrace some awkward silence as I let you do that. Awesome. Hi, Ada. Welcome. Excited that you are also excited to learn more about all the different types of marine science. Welcome, Nina, one of our educators who's hopping on. This is wonderful to have you, Moana. Hi, Rory. Nice to meet you. Welcome, welcome. Hi, Caroline. Caroline is one of our AmeriCorps members. She's hopping on. It's great to have you, Caroline. Very excited to meet Dr. Scott. Hi, Juliana. I love your enthusiasm that's just rolling through your message. That's so wonderful. Hi, Ellie. Welcome, welcome. And Kim, one of our other members, is here. Hi, Casey. Hi, Sophia. We love being on the water too. So excited to be out on the water with you once it's warm enough. Not warm enough today. Cinda, I don't know if you know this, but it is like one of the coldest days so far this winter here in New England. It's very cold.
I don't envy you, but I do sometimes wish I could wear a scarf, like that beautiful scarf that Sarah has on.
I feel like that's how it always goes. It's like the clothing is so cute, but
Right.
actually being in it is very cold. Abby, welcome. We're love that you're here and getting a chance to delve in a little deeper with your interest in water. Hi, Izzy. Welcome, welcome. All right. Well, Mavens, we are so excited to jump into this afternoon's chat. So we are so honored that we get to be joined by Dr. Cinda Scott. She is a marine biologist, educator, conservation advocate, science communicator, and world traveler. Since 2014, she has directed the School for Field Studies, the Center for Tropical Island Biodiversity Studies program in Boca del Toro, Panama. So she's currently coming to us from Panama, where it is so warm and lovely. She manages a team of faculty, staff, and students dedicated to the study of anthropogenic impacts of tourism on the natural environment of Boca del Toro. Her work includes teaching and lecturing, administrative and grants management, and scientific research. She has presented to a wide range of audiences, including students of all ages, government authorities, and concerned community stakeholders. Her current research examines the health of mangrove ecosystems through the Boca del Toro archipelago.
I know
and she maintains interest in marine protected areas, coral reef ecology, and conservation biology. Follow her adventures around the world on her blog, which is cindaseas.world. It's a great blog. I was enjoying reading it the last couple of days. Dr. Cinda Scott, thank you so much for joining us today. I am really excited to get to turn things over to you as you get to meet our Mavens.
Thank you for that amazing introduction. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm so honored to be the first speaker in this series. This is amazing, and I think it's great and wonderful to support young people getting into the field of marine science. So I'm going to share my screen right now, and I hope you all can see that. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm also going to collapse the people boxes, so I can't see anybody. All right, so this talk, I give quite a bit, actually. I've spoken to young people in elementary school all the way up through graduate school and to PhDs and postdocs. And I just think it's really important to share, whatever experience it is to share, because it might seem from the surface that someone has it all together or knows exactly what they're doing or has always known what they wanted to do in their career, and that couldn't be further from the truth, which you will find out shortly. So, have you ever had a dream so big you thought it was too big to happen? Well, that I definitely did. I always knew that I wanted to have this sort of sense of freedom of kind of traveling and being able to do the things that I wanted to do, but I never really thought that could happen to me. I don't know why, I just never thought it could. Because when I was younger, I definitely was born to dance. That's me at about 6 years old in my first dance performance. And I had dreams of being on the show that was called Solid Gold. And it was like the best show on television at the time in the 80s. And you could probably compare it to something like Dancing with the Stars or one of those kind of television variety shows. But I wanted to be on this show so badly, and I knew this was my destiny. But obviously that didn't happen. I became a marine biologist, and as Mary mentioned, I've traveled around the world. I'm an educator. I love speaking to people and inspiring. I'm a science communicator, and I'm a marine equity advocate. So going back, I think it's important that we take a look at this A to B situation, because this is kind of the narrative that we're told growing up. At least in the US, this tends to be the narrative that you should go to college, then you should go to graduate school, or maybe you should work, then you should get married and have kids, or some combination of those two. You have this amazing, illustrious career, and then you're supposed to retire and then travel the world. Well, that hasn't been my A to B at all. Sure, I did start at college, as I highly suggest that even if you don't go to a 4-year institution, if you go to a 2-year institution that you craft a skill and come out with a skill to share with the world. And so this has been my rather loopy path here. And so in 1997, if we just go back to the previous slide, you'll see MDIBL-REU for the summers of 1998, 99. I was just 20 and 21 years old at that time. And in 1997, I had attended something called the Biomedical Science Careers Program Conference that was supported at the Harvard Medical School. And so at the time, I did my undergraduate degree at Middlebury College in Vermont. And so I drove with a bunch of students down to this conference that I had no idea about. I didn't know anything about biomedical science, but I handed my resume out to as many people and I thought, well, why not? And that actually landed me at the Mount Desert Island Biological Laboratories. And it was my first research experience. And I was about to be a senior in university. Most of my friends had been doing research experiences much earlier, and I kind of felt like left out a little bit. So I was really happy to be able to have this opportunity, even though I felt like I was a bit later. And that's really the first time I realized that you could use marine organisms as models for human disease, because I was kind of interested in curing human conditions, but also understanding how marine organisms function. And that's where I really first was able to do DNA and RNA preparations. I learned how to do PCR. And in general, I gained molecular biology skills, which to this day have greatly helped me. And actually, it really forced me into this desire to go to graduate school specifically for molecular biology, but looking at marine organisms. Around that same time in 1997-98, I got the chance to study abroad, and it forever changed my life, because that's where I first got scuba certified. And I got under the water and I thought, why has no one told me about this in my 21 years on Earth? Or actually at that stage I was 20, but why has no one actually ever told me about this magical place that is under the water? And from that point on, I just knew that I needed to be in the water, around the ocean, studying the ocean, understanding the ocean, protecting the ocean. And it was all because I had studied abroad and also had that experience at the Mount Desert Island Biolabs in Maine. And so what did I do when I studied abroad? I did a socio-ecological study looking at mangroves, hung out with my friends on the beach and in the hammocks. We went all over looking at mangroves, and I built a drum, and I had so much fun. Also at that time, I had done many, many different internships. I did a large animal veterinary internship because I thought I wanted to go to veterinary school at some point. I did a small animal veterinary internship, which I fainted, hit the table, and almost killed a cat that was having surgery. Clearly, I found out very quickly that I have limitations and that I probably should not have gone to veterinary school because I don't do well with blood and all of that kind of stuff. So internships are great because they help you know what you like and what you don't. I really think it's very important that you take the initiative to try to get an internship. Contact professors, contact your teachers, see if there's opportunities, ask questions and do your own research. What do you want to study? What interests you? And you never know, just by asking a simple question that could lead you to other people who could give you an opportunity to see if what you want to do is worthwhile. So I really think that even if you don't like what you're doing, particularly maybe if you do an internship, like when I did my small animal veterinary internship, clearly I knew I didn't like what I was doing. And I needed to try to find the positive in the experience. And that helped me to put my best foot forward to try other things and not to be afraid to try other things, even if I didn't like it. I really believe that opportunity is everywhere, but it's really up to you to find it. Nobody else knows what's hiding in that big heart of yours, what you want to do. So you have to go out and let people know what that is and figure out what you want to do. So again, we're back to this crazy loop here. And there's an arrow that just popped up. It's a good thing I have animation on this. Okay, so 2002, we're fast forwarding. I did a whole bunch of stuff in between undergraduate. I took 3 years off. I worked at a crazy place called Organogenesis in Canton, Massachusetts, where I got dressed in a clean suit every day, and I had to check for microbes and make sure that they weren't eating the samples, and that was not fun. And then I finally landed at the New England Aquarium, where I did do an internship in the Bay of Fundy, surveying and documenting northern right whales, and that was really impactful. And it made me realize that, yes, I still wanted to very deeply be part of the marine world, but I didn't want to study large mammals. It's really difficult. And for me, I was like, I kind of need to have a bit more control over my species that I want to study, because whales are everywhere, right? And they're magnificent and amazing, but it wasn't for me. And so then I finally applied to graduate school, and I got into the Rosenstiel School of Marine and Atmospheric Science, RASMUS, at the University of Miami. And that's where I completed my PhD work. And I looked at the heritability of gene expression in fish, because fish are our oldest vertebrate ancestors. And I was really curious about whether or not we also inherit the way that we express genes, not just that we inherit genes, but the way in which we express them. So that took me on a really long journey through graduate school. And I think it's important that it's not about where you go, it's about who's doing impactful research, right? So a lot of people get caught up in a name. Oh, you go to Harvard. Oh, you, whatever it might be. No, it doesn't matter. It's really who's doing the impactful research, who's changing the world. That's who I'm interested in studying with. Who's actually helping people and going out and not just publishing papers, but really influencing and helping and promoting people who otherwise might not have a voice to do things. So in 1997, when I went to that biomedical event at Harvard, I met this guy, John Forrest, because of that event at, and I shouldn't say this guy, Dr. John Forrest. He's incredible. And he really encouraged me to do fish research. And when I got to MDIBL, I also met another man, Dr. David Evans, and he helped me to handle sharks properly. He encouraged me to apply to graduate school. And that led me to Dr. Pat Walsh, also MDIBL, which led me to my graduate advisor and a former MDIBL summer scientist, Dr. Douglas Crawford. And so everybody here knew each other. And I was like, the marine world is so very small. And while I'm really excited that I was able to have these opportunities, I think it's important to take a snapshot of this picture. All men, and they happen to be all white men. And while they did help me greatly in my career and push me forward, it was really these two women who were my mentors. The previous gentlemen were all advisors. Yes, supportive, yes, push me along. But when it came time for me to go through some very tough processes of, you have to have a committee and you have to present your work and defend your thesis. These are the two women that supported me hands down, without question, and believed in me every single step of the way. And I wouldn't be here today without them, because they were mentors. And I think it's really important that you find a mentor, because there's a big difference between a mentor and just an advisor. So find a mentor, or a few. I have many in my life and I love them all. I write them emails, I tell them what I'm up to, and they consistently and continuously encourage me. And Dr. Warden, she's just incredible. She wrote to me the other day, or I shouldn't say the other day, it's been like 4 months now. COVID time, I don't know what time it is anymore. But she wrote to me and she said, I'd really love for you to speak to my graduate students here in Germany. And I said, okay. She's since moved to Germany and is working at a university there. And so I woke up at 5 a.m. because of the time difference, and I gave her graduate students a talk. But I would do anything for her because she just is incredible. And so is Dr. Fleming. So after graduate school, I actually did another internship. So believe it or not, I was 31 years old, and it was the height of the economic crisis in the United States, where there was a housing collapse. So I didn't really have too many job opportunities, and I went home. I lived with my mom at 31 years old, which seemed kind of like a failure. You know, you go and you do this PhD, and then it's like, well, what am I doing here? And I decided, well, if I can't do what I want to do right now, let me do an internship at Wildlife Conservation Society, which wasn't too far from where my mother was living in New York. And so I did that, and I helped to work on and design a shark exhibit at the aquarium, the New York Aquarium. I helped to write grants, and I really learned about the nonprofit world, in particular, the conservation nonprofit world. So that was really actually very valuable. But then I got a quote unquote real job at New York City College of Technology. And while I was there, I learned how to do grants management. I learned how to work with faculty members and teachers to improve their teaching. And I learned how to become an administrator. So what I encourage each of you to do is to choose your own glorious, fun, crooked, messed up path, because you just never know where it's going to take you. You do not have to do things linearly. You can be like all over the place, and that's okay. It's okay to be all over the place. And I actually think it just makes life way more exciting. And that's a picture of me on a sailboat I took from the San Blas Islands of Panama all the way, the 36-hour journey to Cartagena, Colombia. And it was really fun. And that was just a picture of me on the bow there. Interestingly as well, yes, you can change career paths. That's something that I've learned over the years. I started out with these big dreams of being a marine biologist, and everybody thinks, oh, you're going to be like the next Jacques Cousteau. And it's like, no, that is not what's happening. Marine biology is such a vast field. It could be on the policy side, the social side, the actual experimental, the direct experimental side, the practical side. There are so many different ways you can be a marine biologist. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be like in this picture where I was in graduate school collecting fish and taking out hearts, livers, and brains to later process DNA and RNA. That's one side of it. But the other side of it is also the social and policy side. So maybe you're like, okay, I'm in high school, or maybe you're just finishing college, or maybe you're looking to graduate school, whatever stage you're at. What if you're not ready? Well, that's okay, because there is no rush. I remember I set a goal of wanting to finish my PhD by the time I was 30, and I started at 25. And I don't know why I put that kind of pressure on myself. I think I had familial pressure. My dad had his PhD by the time he was 26, which is crazy. Like, I don't understand how he actually did that. And I finally realized that I had to do things on my terms and in my way, and that I couldn't allow family pressure to force me if I wasn't ready, right? So what's the rush? I think it's important to also take time to figure out what you truly want to study, because if you're not passionate about it, like if you just go to law school to go to law school, well, it's not going to be so fun when you're reading thousands of pages every night trying to prep for an exam on the Supreme Court decisions from 1965. So you have to really be passionate about what you want. I think it's important to take time to research your field of interest, interview people in your field, write to them, say, I'd really like to talk with you if you have time for about 10 minutes. Have questions prepared, ask questions to help you. And talking to older people, they know way more than you do, and they're brilliant, most of them. They're just fascinating. When I speak to people of my mom's generation who were born just after the Great Depression and who, survived living through World War II, they have so much experience and they've seen such amazing changes in the world, and they're really important, and I treasure them. So I think it's important to talk with them as well. So an important lesson is that you'll never know unless you try. And this is a picture of Bocas del Toro, where I currently live in Panama. So in 2014, I was sitting at my desk. I was like the city girl. I had everything I needed at my fingertips. I had every train available in New York. I could bike to work, actually, which was really cool. I loved New York. I loved the city, but there was something really, really void in my life. Something that was not making me happy. And I wasn't engaging in the ocean the way that I thought I would after receiving a PhD in marine biology. I thought, what am I doing in the city and I'm not underwater? So in 2014, I packed up my tiny studio apartment, put it in storage where everything still remains. To this day, I need to get rid of that storage unit, next on my list. And I moved to a small island archipelago named Bocas del Toro in Panama, in a remote area of Panama on the Caribbean coast. So where is Panama? Panama is located between Costa Rica and Colombia. And it is a very small country. It's about the size of South Carolina. And its population is very small as well. It has about 4.1 million people. So it's like half the population of New York City in one country. The national bird is the harpy eagle, as you can see there, curiously looking at us. The currency is Balboa, US dollar. And it's home to the Panama Canal, which is a very important point of commerce in the world. And it's home to reggae en español, which gave birth, of course, to reggaeton. Panama says you're welcome. It has 10 provinces and 3 indigenous comarcas. And I live in the province of Bocas del Toro, in the archipelago of Bocas del Toro, on an island called Isla Colón. And I work for the School for Field Studies. And the School for Field Studies is one of the oldest environmental study abroad organizations in the United States. It was founded in 1980 with the purpose of bringing students into the field to study and to put into practice what they learn in theory. And that's exactly what we do. And so I'm the director of the Center for Tropical Island Biodiversity Studies here in Bocas del Toro. And SFS, we have many programs around the globe, not just in Panama. We have in Costa Rica, we have Turks and Caicos, Peru, Chile, Tanzania, Kenya, Bhutan, Australia, and Cambodia. Not all of our programs are currently functioning at the moment due to COVID, but we're hoping to have 6 of our centers open for the spring semester, which starts in 3 weeks. So who am I? I am a marine biologist, and I also oversee this program. And that's where the education piece comes in. I love showing students the wonders of the water. And I love trying to better understand how we can be better stewards to the ocean and to influence policies through scientific practice. So we go into the fields. And what do I do exactly? Well, I do a lot of surveys. I go out on coral reefs, and I go into mangrove forests, and I monitor ecosystem health. Yes, I really don't just float around and take pretty pictures, even though those are hashtag life goals, but I'm almost there, I think. Just kidding. So I also take undergraduate students interested in the ocean and in rainforests into the field. So what that means is we go on a lot of field trips. We are always wet, we are always dirty, we are always out, and it's great. I also get to work with local and national entities to support policies that promote conservation and sustainable use of our natural resources. And that's part of being a marine biologist that I never thought I was going to be able to do. I didn't know about that part of the job, that you get to try to influence policies nationally. That's so cool. And I didn't know that I had the power to be able to do that. And that's been something that I've really cherished. And I also get to work with entities like the Ocean Nexus Center at University of Washington, and I provide important data to improve inequities in ocean policies and practices. So this is an example of what we do out in the field. We're teaching, we're taking students and children, local children out, or we're talking to park guards. And this was my last group that left about a month ago, their last day in Bocas. So I really encourage you all to explore and to learn as much as you can about the marine environment, because the marine environment and the ocean, I should say, sustains all life on this planet. And I really believe in ocean literacy, whether that means you become formally a marine biologist or not. I do believe that ocean literacy, whether it be through your love of sailing or your love of being on the water, is really critical to being able to solve some of the issues facing the world right now, especially with the climate crisis. And conservation needs everybody. It's not just for men, right? It's not just for a certain type of person. It's everybody. It's women, men, people who identify non-binary. It's but we need every single person on this planet to get involved and to start paying more attention to our natural spaces and the ways in which they support us. And so conservation, what is it? It's sustainable use of natural resources, right? It requires people protecting environment and spaces and places, along with policy, having the laws to protect, right? And so interestingly, people and nature have been dating seriously for like 350,000 years. We have been unified for so very long, and it feels like we're having this like major breakup. And it can't happen because we depend on nature for everything. And so I think conservation really requires an aptitude for cultural understanding. We can't begin to solve some of the world's major challenges, particularly in the ocean sphere, if we don't understand culturally how people utilize that sphere. So here's a question that I ask my students when they come to quote unquote paradise. Is paradise a paradise for everyone? So Bocas is known for its magnificent beauty. We have gorgeous beaches. We have 50% of all of the Caribbean mangroves in Panama. We have beautiful marine creatures like this anemone that you can see that I took a photo of. And the tourists come and they enjoy the crystal clear waters and the beautiful beaches. Importantly, we have over 200,000 tourists visiting Bocas every single year. The population is made up of a mixture, and any mixture of Afro-Antillean, indigenous peoples, Chinese Panamanians, Panamanian mestizos, and immigrants from the US, Europe, and South America. Everybody lives in Bocas. And Panama is interestingly considered a middle income country, though parts of it would definitely be considered a developing country, but it has the second worst income distribution in Latin America, where the top 20% of earners control 50% of the economy. And that means that there's great inequity throughout society. And interestingly, rural Panamanians lack access to education because of that inequity. Culturally, Bocas is a very collectivistic society. It has very tight-knit family units, small town vibes, cultural traditions are very much passed orally, and it's home to the nation's largest indigenous group, the Nobe Bugle. And there are 4 languages spoken here: Spanish, Wari-Wari, which is like a Jamaican patois, from mostly Afro-Antillean people speak Wari-Wari, Navere, which is spoken by Nobe, and English is spoken. So when we begin to understand the cultural context of where we live, we can better understand the ways in which we can start to practice conservation. So I just want to take a moment because I do think this is really important. The Hofstede Index is a metric of culture based on 5 dimensions. And one of those dimensions is individualism versus collectivism. Panama is ranked 11 with regard to individualism and collectivism. In other words, Panama is a highly collectivistic society. The US is the most individualistic society in the world, ranking number 91 in the index ranking. So Panama, right? I'm a US scientist coming into Panama. I have highly individualistic belief systems, and I'm working in a highly collectivistic society. I need to recognize my limitations and what I can and cannot do in someone else's country, particularly with regard to communication, my opinions, the way that others are viewed. I need to understand the differences between what's valued in a collectivistic society and what's valued in the individualistic society. So for example, If you look at communication, speaking one's mind is healthy in an individualistic society, but in a collectivistic society, harmony should be maintained. So it's not just you, right? You have to think about everybody else in that society. So I recently, or I guess in October of 2020, it's not recent anymore, I gave a TEDx talk to bring awareness to the climate crisis. But I was actually talking about reimagining the Isla Bastimentos National Marine Park. And I brought up that, that cultural competence is and should be a requirement for doing conservation work. And so what does this have to do with science? Well, I really believe that conservation must be rooted in equity. So you've probably seen this, I hope you've seen this, or some form of this, but equality, right? In the top part, this is the difference between equality and equity. In the top part, you can see that everybody has a bicycle. The woman in the wheelchair also has a bicycle. So everybody has the same thing. The problem is that it's not equitable, right? Look at the little kid at the top. He has a bicycle. Great, everybody has a bicycle, but can he ride it very well? Not really. And the guy with the long legs, he has a bicycle too. Can he ride it very well? Not really. Equity is more important, right? Because now the woman in the wheelchair, now the guy with the long legs, now the woman on the bike and the young kid with a smaller bike, everybody has a bike, but it's adjusted for them. It's adjusted so that they can be successful. And that is the difference between equality and equity. And so when I ask this question, is paradise a paradise for everyone? We really need to look at equity. What is going on? Why do some people have more and some people have less? And why are some people allowed to do some things and others are not? And so when I look at our paradise, I've taken all of these photos. I see trash, I see waste mismanagement, I see coral bleaching. That's, not just a local issue, but a global issue. I see unregulated development with bungalows being built over coral reefs. And I see tourists, and I don't know who these people are. Sorry, I just took their picture, but they're holding a starfish at Starfish Beach, which they should not do because touching wildlife affects their behavior and eating patterns. But these are all threats to marine ecosystems. And so what other challenges do you think are affecting small island ecosystems besides coral bleaching, waste mismanagement, unsustainable development, and unregulated tourism? We're dealing with a lot: loss of biodiversity, deforestation of mangroves and loss of habitat. We have hypoxia, we have climate change, sedimentation, and overfishing. And there's a tendency for all of us to blame the other guy, right? Oh, well, it's because of the developing nations that we have all these problems with coral bleaching. Oh, well, it's this problem. We have the banana industry here that's causing all this sedimentation and hypoxia or lack of oxygen in the water. Oh, it's this person, or it's this person, or it's the expats that come in and develop, or it's this and that. And the reality is, if we don't stop and try to figure out together how to solve these problems, we're just going to keep blaming each other. So how do we solve these challenges? Well, we have to take government officials out to see some of the challenges, right? So behind me, I had the opportunity through the Bocas del Toro Hope Spot, which I helped to found with Krista Shu, who is the Hope Spot champion. That is the Minister of Tourism for all of Panama. And I have been able to communicate with him on a regular basis about some of the issues that are affecting this region of Panama. And I was able to take him out to go snorkeling on the reefs here for the very first time in his entire life. He had never been snorkeling on the reefs of Bocas. So he couldn't make an informed decision about the reefs of Bocas without seeing them. So it's really important to work alongside local and national environmental groups. And this is one of my greatest joys of being a biologist and a marine biologist, is being able to make that connection for people. The policy advocates and the actual scientists on the ground working together to try to make some changes. And it also involves getting out in the field and training park guards. There are only 8 park guards in all of Bocas del Toro, and they don't have so much knowledge. Some of them have a 6th grade, 8th grade education. And so some of them have, yes, community and local indigenous knowledge, which is highly valuable. But for doing monitoring and surveys, they have to be trained on which fish species are valuable to monitor over time to see if there's a decline or an increase in biomass, for example. We also go out and we try to educate very, very young kids about birding and the importance of migratory birds in the region. And it really involves a whole team, you know, all of us working together to try to bring some level of change and understanding as to why education is particularly about the marine environment is so critical for all of our survival. So weighing heavily on my mind lately is, how do we build greater equity in ocean science? How do we build equity into our models and frameworks of conservation? And how do we make sure that equity and equitable sharing of natural resources are measures of effectiveness? Because that's not always included in a lot of studies, right? So we really need to think about the way in which the ocean is shared, utilized, and how to make it equitable, because it's not right now. Certain people are able to do things and others are not, but it's all one ocean and it's a shared resource and we all need to be responsible for it. So why does equity in ocean science matter? Why am I so hyped up on this? Well, this is a picture that I took out of the plane. It's a little prop plane that brings you to the islands. And I noticed about 8 months ago that there was a property, you can see it there, and I'm going to show you. That is an illegal property in the middle of the mangroves. And I thought, how on earth is this possible that this person could just come to Bocas and build a house in the middle of the mangroves, and the mangrove islands, no less, highly protected? Well, first you have to know what value maybe this person placed on this ecosystem. What value would you place on that ecosystem? What value would someone from Bocas place on that ecosystem? Because the person who built that had to have gone to the municipal government to get permissions. And then what strategies can we come up with for better protection of mangroves in the region based on more inclusive and local values? Because the values that that person had, who happens to be a foreigner who built that house, aren't the same values as the person living in the region. So the rules can't apply to some and not others. Otherwise, we will have continued inequality and continued destruction of habitats. And that's actually what the location looks like up close, because my students and I boat stocked it for a couple of days. So ocean equity is an environmental justice issue, which is a social justice issue. So when it comes down to it, when we talk about inequity in ocean policy and in ocean management and ocean science, we're really talking about a social justice issue. This is a photo that I took off the boat of a man who moved to Bocas, a foreigner, who cut down the entire front of the mangroves there to build a beach, because he's building his idea of paradise. Is paradise a paradise for everyone? He's impacting the entire ecosystem there. Is that okay? So I have this new project that I've been working on, and it's a socio-ecological project. And it's how do different groups of people value mangroves? And what is the cultural value of mangroves? Because in most projects, they look at the ecological value. They look at how many fish species, fish abundance. They look at the economic benefit, but they're not also valuing the cultural value. And so with the Ocean Nexus Center, I've set out to do this new project. And I just did the first part of it with 3 of my students that were here this past semester. And we titled it Assessing the Ecological and Social Impacts of Recent Developments on Mangrove Ecosystems in Bocas del Toro, Panama. And so my students and I went out, rain or shine. That on the right photo is us in a huge rainstorm trying to do our work. On the left is my students doing a focus group. We had 7 different focus groups with different groups of people and stakeholders in the region. And that middle picture is our team. So we used some sociological methods to do this work. We wanted to understand the cultural value of mangroves by using the Cultural Ecosystem Services Framework, which looks at how are mangroves supporting people, How are they providing provisioning for people? How is it regulating the weather and climate and tides and ocean circulation? And what are the cultural values? So we held different focus groups of local or indigenous community members and also lifestyle migrants from across the archipelago. So a lifestyle migrant is someone who might move here from another country and start planting roots here, right? And living here for the rest of their lives. So what we found was really interesting because we thought that there was going to be quite a large difference between different groups of people. And the reality is that it wasn't so different. So across all three groups, people are most worried about quality of life. And they tie that to ecosystem health. So in the three circles, you can see that quality of life and ecosystem health are of the most important of all of these different categories to all people. And then there are some similarities between what local and indigenous people and lifestyle migrants value. Community protection. They realize that mangroves provide community protection, whereas tourists who might not be as familiar with mangroves value education and making sure that people are better educated. And lifestyle migrants seem to be worried about fish supply because it impacts their ability to eat whatever fish they want. And local and indigenous people in the region are more worried about species variety. So there are some really important quotes that came out from our investigation. And one of them is, mangroves serve as a barrier so that when the tide rises, it doesn't penetrate inwards and damage land we use for planting and gardening, and are super, super important because that's where the different marine species live. Mangroves have a spiritual meaning. They represent something to us. They represent the life of the earth. When you cut the mangroves, you cut the life of the earth. I clean, someone else dirties the mangroves. So what are we doing? Gringos come in, they buy a piece of property, and the mangroves are blocking their view, and whack. So we were able to harness from our investigation that local value of mangroves is of understanding that there is this very intricate relationship between this natural resource and how we can use this natural resource to protect ourselves and to give ourselves meaning, right? Having a spiritual meaning. We also did an ecological study, and we tried to look at whether or not where there were disturbances of mangrove removal, that there was also disturbance on the ecological side. So that's one of my students holding up a measuring stick on a PVC pipe and taking a photo so that we could standardize photos and figure out percent cover of mangrove roots, and trying to figure out how much of a mangrove root is sponge, is bivalve, is, you know, whatever it might be, right? Or urchin. And so we also did transects to look at fish biodiversity and abundance, urchin biodiversity and abundance, hard coral cover, and fire sponge and oyster abundance. And we use these, mostly these bioindicator species, because they tend to change rapidly, their population and their actual size when presented with stress. And so this is what we're up against here. These are all new constructions. On the left-hand side is someone's personal home over the water, and there's a coral reef in front of it. And on the right, this is the new luxury facility that's been made. Now you can only see 5 bungalows there, and each has its own private pool in the ocean, but there are 15 of them, and they have a permit to build more. And these are all in front of mangroves, all near or on top of coral reefs. So we did ecological monitoring, and that's one of my students on the right in the water. She is fearlessly swimming and snorkeling near mangroves that have been removed in order to make that dock to have access to this luxury resort. And on the left is my student Max, who is diligently taking notes from his teammates on what they found. Sorry, that was a repeat. Okay, so this is a map of the archipelago, and you can see those sort of maroon pinkish dots are all where mangroves are throughout the area. And the other orange dots are the sites where we did ecological monitoring throughout. So this is a work in progress, and I wish I had concrete statistical evidence to show you, but I'm in the process of finishing it, but I did find that there is a higher abundance of fire sponge in areas with greater development, which is a sign of disturbance. And so I still have a lot more to go, but this is one of my favorite photos from our recent research. And I just love mangroves. They are absolutely vital to all of our survival. And if you don't know much about them, I encourage you to learn about them. And perhaps maybe you, through understanding marine biology, could become an expert in mangrove habitat complexity and analysis. So just to conclude that part of this, conservation requires people. All people. I don't care who you are. In this photo, you can see there is the head of the tourism police. There's the head of the sea turtle conservation group. There are fisher people. There are Ministry of Environment. There's Ministry of Tourism. We have all different kinds of people represented in this meeting. And that's because to come up with some of the solutions that we're going to need, we need everybody, not just a few people who think it's really cool to say, save the whales or save this or save that. No, it goes very deep. All of us, every single person has a relationship with nature, and that needs to be celebrated and accounted for by having all different kinds of stakeholders present at the table. So how did I get here? Because clearly I didn't take such a traditional route to becoming this marine biology person, right? I like to call myself and refer to myself as a fabulous nerd, so a fabu nerd. So these are just some tips on becoming a fabu nerd. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. Ice Cube, some of you might be too young to remember, but he was a rapper and he was very influential in the 90s. And he said, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Very important message. Why? Because first and foremost, I'm a person. But secondly, I'm a woman. I identify as a woman. And thirdly, I happen to be a Black woman. I don't care if you're a white woman, if you're a Latina woman, whoever you are. You need to know who you are inside, because before you can go out and help to solve the world or to love another person, you need to know who you are first and cherish every part of who you are. Because otherwise, when people start to draw borders around you and to tell you what you can and cannot do, you're going to feel like those things are true because you haven't yet done the work to value every inch of you. So check yourself before you wreck yourself is really make sure you know who you are, and then force people to look beyond the obvious. Because by societal standards, I'm not supposed to be a marine biologist. Absolutely not. I represent less than 0.5% of people, Black women in particular, with a PhD in marine biology. We are far and few between. We exist. And we have a group now called Black Women in Ecology, Evolution, and Marine Science. And we're finding each other all over the globe. And it's really fantastic. But when you are different, or when you feel like you are different, you have to work 10 times as hard to make people see you for you, because they're trying to put you in that square bubble, right? They're trying to make themselves feel better by making sure that you stay where you're supposed to be. So you have to force people to look beyond the obvious and do everything you're not supposed to do. That doesn't mean go base jumping, right? It just means do the things that are going to surprise other people. Go get a PhD in marine biology. If you're not supposed to like go get a degree in mechanical engineering, go do it anyway and surprise the hell out of everybody. Because when I walk in a room, most people don't expect me to say that I'm a marine biologist. And I very proudly tell people, no, I am. And they're like, well, do you dive? I'm like, what marine biologist doesn't dive? Yes, of course I dive. Hello. So those are the kinds of comments that you might receive, or the kinds of attitudes that you might be up against. And you really need to have the strength within, by checking yourself before you wreck yourself, to force people to look beyond the obvious. You have to learn as much as you can and be nerdtastic, Fabi nerd. 2009, I did a poster for graduate school in Barcelona. 2014, I also was doing posters. I still do posters, spreading the word, right? And I encourage my students to do posters. So this is Charlotte. She did a poster. And all my students over the years have sent me their pictures of them in front of their nerdtastic posters, sharing what they've learned. And I love it. It is a beautiful life. And I really think traveling and exploring as much as possible is really important, but doing it in a culturally responsible and culturally sensitive way. I think that studying abroad was so impactful for me that that's actually what I wound up doing in my career, but combining the administrative with the marine biology, with the love of traveling and teaching and all of that, right? So I really encourage you to get out of your comfort zones and to go. I went to Mozambique for a sabbatical 2 years ago, and everyone, I was like, you're going by yourself to Mozambique? And at that point, I had already traveled to Brazil by myself, Colombia by myself. I love traveling alone. It teaches me so much, and I'm not afraid, and you shouldn't be afraid. Mozambique was one of the most wonderful places I've ever been to. And I can't wait to go back to East Africa. And actually, I'd really love to explore West Africa. There's so many places in the world that I still have to go to. So there's a lot to look forward to. I really think it's important to stay positive even when life is looking hairy. So there's this thing called the growth mindset. This is the Dweck growth mindset. And you can have a fixed mindset or you can have a growth mindset. A lot of us like to think, oh yeah, I have a growth mindset. I'm already there. The reality is you probably don't yet. And that's okay. But bringing awareness to the fact that you need to begin to shift from the fixed to the growth is a great start. Because if you have a fixed mindset, you tend to think that intelligence is static. And when you think that you can't grow anymore, that leads to a desire to look smart, right? Like, oh, I'm so smart. And then you start talking as if you're the smartest person in the room. And everyone's looking at you like, you have no idea what you're talking about, right? You don't want to be that person. You want to have a growth mindset where you can develop your intelligence and where you can lead to a desire to learn and know more, but knowing that you don't know everything. I learned so much from my students. I learned so much from the people around me. I learned so much from the people of Vocus. And I might have a PhD, but I don't know everything. I don't. And I acknowledge that. And when somebody asks me a question and I don't know it, I simply say, I don't actually know, instead of pretending that I do because I have some crazy degree, right? So that's really important. Surround yourself with people who value you and all of your baggage. So maybe it's your family, maybe it's your friend family, or maybe it's your dog. I mean, I love my dog because I just walk in and he loves me. He doesn't say, oh, da, 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 right? So surround yourself with people who value you and your baggage, who accept you for all of you, not just parts of you. And I think it's so important to teach. I think the message that young people are getting is that teaching is not valuable for some reason. And yet it's the heart of all of us. All of us at some point have had a teacher who has inspired, who has promoted us. And yet it's not valued in our society. And I think it's so very sad. And that needs to change. And I think teaching will change you. It changes your life. It forces you to invest part of you in others. And then when you see how others grow, it's like the most profound, moving thing you could possibly do is teach and give of yourself, because you never know where teaching is actually going to take you. This is me speaking in front of a group of awardees at my former university. I never thought I would have the opportunity to do that. And it's all because of teaching. Pay your rent. So this comes from the Honorable Shirley Chisholm. And she said, service is the rent that you pay for room here on this earth. So I had the opportunity to travel to Cuba a few years ago, and I saw this young boy on the right playing in the street. And I thought, I don't know what opportunities this child has, but if he had more opportunity, he was just playing with rocks and he was having the greatest time. But I thought, if he had more opportunity, if he had more things to be presented with, he could potentially change the world. And I don't have children, but I do believe that other people's children are all of our responsibility. And it's our responsibility to educate them and to make sure that they become good stewards of the world. And so when I travel and I see kids, I definitely try my best to just see maybe if I could provide some kind of way or opportunity for them to see things in a different way, right? Or to help shape communities. And that's what I do here in Focus, is helping to shape communities so that we can all reap the reward. And I also think that love, you're no different from anyone else. I think you have to learn to love yourself and accept your own limitations. And I think that connections with people are really, really, really important. And it's what shapes our humanity, and having reverence for life. So not just saying, okay, I want to protect this for this reason or selfish reasons, but because those organisms and habitats deserve to be just as they are, just as you deserve to be just as you are. And I really think that love comes in many forms and that we have to be very open to it. So that's a picture of me and my mom, and she's taught me all of these lessons that I'm giving you. And I also think that showing gratitude is absolutely so important. What are you grateful for each day? And have you told someone, like your teacher today, how much you appreciate them? Even if they give you homework, be appreciative that they want you to learn on your own how to solve problems. We need problem solvers in this world. We don't need people to just regurgitate information. We need people to actually take the information, manipulate it, and figure out how we're going to solve this issue that we're all finding ourselves in right now. So in conclusion, you should apply anyway to wherever you want to apply, because you never know where it's going to take you. I think you have to trust in yourself, finding a mentor, not just an advisor. Do everything you're not supposed to do. Again, I don't mean that in like some wild, like have a rager, right? I just mean forcing people to look beyond the obvious. So life's journey really is never point A to B. And there are nooks and crannies, there are highs and lows. And that's what's going to give you the tough skin and to help you get to the next level. And I really think that practicing intellectual humility helps you on your way. What does that mean? You are never the smartest person in the room. I have been schooled by a 5-year-old in the woods who told me exactly what tree it was, what fruit it was, and which animals eat it. I have no idea. I am used to a deciduous forest and I arrive in a rainforest. Of course I don't know, but I'm going to trust the 5-year-old, that's for sure. And I'm going to trust not to eat something if he tells me not to eat it. So I cannot lie. I am worried. Like I am really, really worried about some of the issues that are affecting our oceans right now. And I wish I could be more positive about that. I wish I could tell you that, oh, things are great, everything's going to be okay, but it's not. And we have local and global problems that are impacting our coral reefs, which do sustain all life on Earth. And I think we can do better. And we need you. We need the future. We need the future generations to do that. And so I do think that conservation needs to be rooted in equity for us to address these issues properly, because the more diverse ideas that we have, the more solutions we'll have that reflect and respect cultural differences. So I encourage you all to get out there and, share your knowledge, educate other people about what you know. That's a group of my students working with a group of University of Panama students who had never been snorkeling. So we went snorkeling together. That's a group underneath. Those are high school students from the local high school here in Bocas del Toro. There's one high school on the island. And so it's a great opportunity to be able to take students who otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity out into the field, and to also do teacher training. Those are 2 teachers that we work with quite often. So why should you care about what happens in Bocas? Well, the choices that you make impact other people around the globe. So think about what kinds of changes you'll make this day, this very, very day, to help the coral reefs and mangroves of Panama. So I have a few suggestions. You can change your eating habits if you're able to. you can eat sustainably and you can buy locally whenever possible. I also think that if you do travel, offsetting your carbon and staying at sustainable hotels or hostels is really, really very important. And supporting local hotels, not just big chains. And I also think that you must shop with the environment in mind at all times and know where your stuff comes from and where it is going to end up. That is the loop that needs to close. Where is it going to end up? Because it's one thing to buy a recycled fleece from Patagonia or something, or Cotopaxi or whatever. But where are you going to put that when its life is over? It's not just about the buy, it's about the end part. And I encourage you all to dream big. So I told you at the beginning that I loved dancing and that I thought I was going to be this like famous star on Solid Gold. And clearly that didn't happen. But I have been throughout the years able to dance in small dance companies and share the magic that I feel from dancing with the world, along with the magic I feel with helping to solve the climate and ocean crisis and studying my favorite creatures under the ocean. So as I said before, yes, you can change career paths, and it's okay not to know what you want to do even after high school, college, or graduate school, but I encourage you to stay thirsty. What does that mean? Staying thirsty, going after what you want, not what your parents want, not what anybody else wants, but what makes you tick and what makes you alive. So stay thirsty. And this is a really important quote from this woman pictured here. Her name's Wangari Maathai, and unfortunately she passed away some time ago. But she led a green belt movement to do reforestation in Kenya. And she says, you cannot protect the environment unless you empower people. And I 100% agree with that statement. And so empowering involves rethinking, right? Rethinking how you interact with the natural world and natural spaces. It's refusing to engage in certain behaviors and activities, right? There are certain things that I will never buy because it doesn't agree with the environment or the way that I want to practice conservation. And reducing your influence and impact on the earth is vitally important. In addition to repurposing, repairing, reusing, recycling. Try to be a vegetarian. Over the pandemic, I was a vegetarian fully for about 4.5 months. And then I had fish and it was all over. But I do limit my fish intake, and I also limit, I don't eat beef or pork. It doesn't make me a saint. It just makes me human and wanting to do my best to protect this planet that I love dearly, and know where your stuff comes from. So I do have a website, as Mary mentioned at the beginning of this talk, and I am on a mission to build equity in ocean science. So if you want to join me, please go to cindaseas.world. And I thank you. And if you would like to contact me, or if you have inquiries about the Field Studies School, you can go to the website. And I'm happy at this point to take any questions that you have.
Cinda, I'm going to express my daily gratitude and say thank you so much. That was wonderful.
You're welcome. I don't know how to end this share. Hang on a second. Is there a... Hang on a second. Oh, I guess it did it automatically. Okay.
It's perfect. So, Mavens, if you have a question for Cinda, we're actually able to, if you want to raise your hand, we're able to unmute you and you can ask your question yourself. Or if speaking out loud is something that makes you a little uncomfortable, you can also put your question in the chat and we can read it for you. So whichever way makes you comfortable, we can make it work for you. So take a minute, think if you have any questions. Sarah, do you have any questions for, oh, we have a question already. So what was the plant or algae called again?
Ooh, okay, tell me which plant or algae.
Juliana, could I unmute you? Would you like to talk? Would that be cool?
Hello.
Hi.
So you were talking about like it was like some sort of like territory or like a plant or like an algae that you were talking about that was being like impacted by like like houses or like still like, places built in the ground?
I think I had mentioned, well, mangroves,
There it is.
tree,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, so mangroves are trees. They're salt tolerant trees that live on the coast in mostly tropical areas within, yeah, I would say that.
Yeah, I just wanted to do more digging because like I wanted to
Yeah.
because I forgot what it was called and I just wanted to know.
No, that's okay. Mangroves, they are absolutely vitally important. And, mangroves aren't just standalone ecosystems, they're also really intertwined with seagrasses and coral reefs. So definitely look into that because the connection between seagrasses, coral reefs, and mangroves are what provide especially economically important fish like snapper, the ability to hide in those little nooks and crannies to grow into adults, to land on our plates. And without those ecosystems, we won't have those economically important fish.
Awesome. Thank you for your question. I was wondering, Cinda, are any of the other schools or field studies, do they have mangroves? And do you think that you have any colleagues that are interested in replicating your study that you did in their region?
Yeah, so we have mangroves in our Turks and Caicos location and also in our Cambodian location. So definitely the study could be replicated all over the world, as it should be, because when I started to do this research, this new study, I found that there were only 12 published papers on cultural value of mangroves. That's it. We don't know a lot. There's so much that we do not know that, I'm so excited to speak to these mavens because I want to know which of you is going to be the next, to uncover the next greatest thing. We have the ocean is so big and we know so little about it. And we also know so little about the ways in which people use it and have a relationship with it. And we need more, not just marine biologists, but the social ecological biologists in the marine sphere. It's definitely needed.
Mavens, I 100% echo what Cinda said about mangroves. If you get the chance to travel to some place where there are mangroves and you get to snorkel in them, life-changing moment in the ocean. They are beautiful. Yeah. You never know what you're going to find. It's just spectacular.
Yes, absolutely. And I could spend hours just looking at the roots. There's so much life on the roots and so much diversity. It's just incredible. So I see a question there.
We have another question from Ada in the chat. So what were some of the challenges you faced to getting where you are, other than not knowing exactly what you wanted to do?
Yeah. Oh boy. Well, I'd have to say definitely as a woman, sometimes you are not seen as smart or intelligent. And I think there's a lot of sexism, particularly in fields of science. But one of the things that you have to overcome is a lot of sexism, and in my case also racism. It is there, and unfortunately it's there, and you can't change people. I'm not on a mission to change everybody, otherwise I'd be exhausted, right? I would be so tired. So instead, as I mentioned, I had to just at some point put my head down and say, is this what I want? And it was what I wanted. And so I did everything in my power to make sure I got what I wanted. And I tend to do that. People who know me tend to know that I get what I want because I fight for it every day. And I'm not afraid to do that. But I also had to do a lot of self-work. And I think that's actually one of the biggest challenges is the work that you have to do on yourself to give yourself the confidence to be able to face all those challenges, because they will arise.
Looks like we've got another question. Yeah. So Kim wants to know, are there any places or programs you wish you had gone to or participated in your non-A to B journey that you would suggest that our Mavens look into?
Yeah, actually, so the program that I did for study abroad, I loved it. I wouldn't change it, but I do wish it was a bit more structured, like what I provide to my students. I look at what we do now and I'm like, what was I doing? So I wish that I had gone to a bit more of a structured program that and trust me, I really don't regret the program that I did. I learned so much and I really grew into myself. But I do wish I had gone to a school that provided a bit more scientific background. Also, the program I went on was taught all in Spanish, whereas the program that I run is taught in English. So my ability to fully understand at that time, I don't think was as good as it is now. So I wonder if I missed a lot just because of the language barrier. But yes, there are also some other things that I kind of like. There were some high school programs that I wish I had known about to get me to go and travel more, or just to be out in the environment a bit more. I think I wished I had known about that when I was younger, but I don't think it really made or broke me. It would have probably added to my whole experience, I think.
I think going off of that, I have one question that I was thinking about that's related to the community of marine science, whether it's or just a community where you live, maybe it's joining a group. What are some ways that you yourself have found your way in a new community or place? Because to me, it's a big thing to kind of start your own life in a new country, whether it's in a language that you grew up speaking or a new language. So I think, do you have any tips for us? We might not be traveling to new countries and starting lives in different places, but for just joining a new community or a place to feel a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, well, definitely research. I think before you step into any new thing is doing your homework. I think sometimes we set expectations that are just not realistic, and we have to bring it down like 20 notches and say, okay, what was I really thinking here? So I think especially going into moving to a new country, I had to do a lot of background research, but I had also lived in Costa Rica, so I knew kind of what to expect, but not really, because it's so culturally very different between Costa Rica and Panama, even though they're right next to each other, but culturally vastly different. And so I don't think I was very prepared for the cultural difference, but I certainly was prepared for the living difference. And it's taken me several years to even still get used to my island life and forming and meeting my own expectations every single day. Like the power went out yesterday, or the water doesn't go on, or the things that you're so accustomed to at home maybe aren't the same here. And it's just part of life. It's like, oh, the guy at the bank is sick, but he's the only guy at the bank. Okay, there's no bank today. Okay, there's one bank on the island. There's no bank today. Or like, just the eggs. If the egg guy doesn't show up, okay, well, there's no eggs. So it's just getting used to living without. And most people in the world live without every single day. And that's the reality. We are super privileged in the US to have at our fingertips whatever we want, whenever we want it. And I think it's a good reality check when you do make a leap to live somewhere else, to see just a glimpse of how the vast majority of the world actually lives, because we live in a bubble at home where we think that these things are normal, and they're not. Most of the world doesn't get to turn a light switch and have lights come on. It's just not. It's not the norm. So yeah, I digressed a little at the end there. I'm sorry.
Rory sent us a question. She wants to know, how did you narrow down the specific type of thing you wanted to study in the marine field? It's a big ocean.
It is a big ocean. Internships, Rory, that's what I did. I highly recommend doing as many internships. So I originally wanted to be a veterinarian. And as I mentioned, I fainted and hit the table and almost killed a cat. No, Cinda, you're not going to be a veterinarian. I'm sorry. There was nothing that was going to get me over the blood, over the everything. So how did I narrow to marine biology to begin with? Well, it's not like I didn't grow up at the ocean, right? I didn't grow up sailing. I didn't grow up doing that. I mean, I swam, I danced, I did gymnastics, I skied. And, I was exposed to quite a bit, but I was not exposed to the ocean so much. But I did during the summertime go to summer camp, and I loved lakes. And then we would go on trips to the ocean, and I loved doing that. And I think I forced myself to have the ocean experience through the internship and the REU that I did at Mount Desert Island Biolabs in Maine. That's where I first learned that I could do molecular biology, which what I was interested in all throughout college, but I'd never had the chance to actually practice it until MDIBL. And then when I found out that some of the people I worked with at that place were doctors, like medical doctors, but like studying fish, I was like, what the heck is this? So then, then I thought, well, what if I went to graduate school and said that I wanted to study molecular biology, but do it to study something with fish, because that would be so cool. And that's what I wrote in my graduate application. And at the time, nobody was really studying genomics and genetics in fish. But then a study came out that was really important, linking and showing how like alcohol dehydrogenase, which is an important enzyme in humans, was really well studied in fish because we share that enzyme in common. So I thought, all right, I can do the molecular biology, but I can use fish as my model. Some people use sea slugs, or some people use worms, some people study flies, but I studied fish. And I think I haphazardly fell into the fish world because that was the organism that I thought was really cool. And then I narrowed it down even further into molecular biology of fish, because I loved molecular biology. So that's how I fell into that specific field. But then coming out of graduate school, I was like, I kind of wish I had a more macro understanding of the ocean, because I was looking at everything so micro, right? Like I look at the sequencer and try and figure out which genetic codes were matching what, and doing microarrays and all this stuff in the lab. So in my adult life, well, I guess I was an adult all through grad school, but in my real, like now that I'm an actual adult at 44, I think I'm an adult. I'm realizing that I can do the macro based off of the micro, and you can it morphs and it changes, and it's really cool. I think you can always grow and change in the field of marine biology. It doesn't just have to be this one thing. And recently becoming an Ocean Nexus Fellow with U Washington has made me realize, oh, I just did a study, just like a focus group study, asking random people about their relationship with mangroves. That I'm now a social scientist. I don't know why, but like this happens, right? Like everything morphs and changes and shifts. And it's just what I'm doing right now in my world and in my life. And I love it.
Let's see here. Mavens, do you have any more questions for Cinda?
You can ask me anything, really.
I have one last one.
Okay.
I was just kind of curious if there was a moment in your life where you really felt like you made the switch from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, or was there like specific work you did to help get yourself into a growth mindset?
Yeah, that is an awesome question. So I think I had a very fixed mindset when I was in New York. It's not that I don't want to put that on myself, that I never thought that I could grow more, but I don't think I had the tools. I don't think I believed in myself enough until the minute I accepted the job for the School for Field Studies is when I was like, oh, okay, I'm leaving the country and moving somewhere else with no friends or family, and I'm clearly a crazy person. But that was the moment when I said, no, actually, this is right for me. This is what I want for myself. And I'm going to learn so much. I'm going to be the marine biologist I always thought I was supposed to be, right? I'm going to be in the water and I'm going to be teaching students. And that's when I was like, I can change. I don't have to be what these other people are telling me to be at the bench or as an administrator, right? Like, you get stuck in these places where people are going to tell you what they want you to be. As kind-hearted as they are, they're going to say, oh, but you're perfect for that. You should just stay and do that. And it's like, who are you? You don't get to tell me that. I get to tell me that. And I'm ready. And I was ready. And I did adopt a growth mindset. So mind you, all through, I think, my undergraduate career, I don't think I had a very growth mindset because I was constantly worried about what other people thought of me. Not just, in how smart I was, but like what I looked like, because I was constantly being judged, like, you're not supposed to be here. So, and also being the only woman sometimes in some of my upper level classes, and especially in graduate school, going through some of those upper level, like my virology class at the medical school, I walked in and they're like, who's the crazy girl from the Marine school taking virology? Like, and I was like, hello. So I think you, yeah, at some point you do have to make the switch and believe in yourself. And that might not happen for a little while, but I think when you know, and I didn't learn about the growth mindset until New York, until I was teaching other faculty and I had all these resources that someone had given to me, and I was like, whoa, I can't teach faculty if I don't do this for myself. Yeah.
Well, Cinda, thank you so much for
You're welcome. It's
speaking
my
with us
pleasure.
today.
My
You kicked
pleasure.
off our program. This is the very first
Yay.
Mavis program we have ever had. And if it's okay with you, I'd love to share your contact information with our Mavens. So if they ever have any questions or want to pick your brain a little further, is that okay?
Absolutely. And, one thing that I think is so special is that I came to Nest through you, and it was just from talking and from writing. I wrote this article for Waterlust, and you never know. You put it out there and you don't know what you're going to get in return. So on my last words of wisdom, I would say, you never know unless you try. You got to put it out there for people to know who you are and what you're doing. Yeah. Otherwise, I
true.
wouldn't have been here.
So
and now
true.
I'm on the board of Nest. Crazy. Yeah.
Life is wild like that. It's so true.
Yeah.
And our beautiful marine science world is this great little, it's a little world sometimes. Like, it's amazing the connections that we have within it. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Sarah, did you have any final thoughts before we signed off?
Just wanted to say thank you again to all of our Mavens who signed on, and to Cinda. That was an awesome presentation. I kind of jumped into the marine science world through Ness. So I learned a lot about marine science from that, but also just really good life advice. So thank you for that, for our Mavens and for myself a little bit. We're really excited that this was our first event, and just thank you again.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I hope you all stay warm up there. If you need a Caribbean break, come on down.
think we all do. I think I mean, it's only January.
Right.
We're at the beginning.
Yeah.
Mavens, be on the lookout in your emails for our next series. It'll be coming up on February 8th. So a chance to learn a little bit more about a couple other kind of lesser known careers that are in our marine science world. I hope everybody has a wonderful evening. I think we're all kind of like buzzing a little bit with this wonderful Cinda energy. Cinda, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
You're so welcome. It was so wonderful. And I just want to say to the Mavens, you know, just keep being your authentic selves and being open growth mindset. Mhm.
Thank you. Thanks, Cinda. All right, everyone, have a great evening, and we'll see you again in about a month.
Bye.
Bye.